I was struggling my way through a list of wingers, and then Spurs signed Kudus. Was working on a list of number 10s, and then I thought Spurs were going to sign Morgan Gibbs-White, and now obviously they're not. So I guess I need to go back to this. But as much as I think it would benefit Spurs to bring in a player like that, in my opinion, what Tottenham are really missing is a deep lying playmaker, a technical, creative midfielder who can progress the ball through the centre of the pitch. And in fact, I've got a list of what I think are suitable candidates. I've broken that list into two parts, roamers and sitters. In my opinion, the best possible use of Spurs' squad is to get Bergvall on the pitch, and when we play Bentancur, play him also in that same box-to-box number 8 central midfielder role. So in my opinion, if we are to bring in a technical creative midfielder, we want the sitter. We want a number 6, someone who receives the ball from the centre-backs, who can turn on the ball under pressure, but also defensively someone who can sit in that same position and shields the defence with smart positioning. And so while there are some really good roaming number 8 type midfielders who could maybe play that role, I think we should probably be prioritising a genuine number 6. But let's work our way through this list, starting from the bottom and leading up to my number 1 candidate. Starting from the bottom is Middlesbrough's Hayden Hackney, 23-year-old. He is definitely in that mould of a roamer in the way that he plays for Middlesbrough. However, his technical comfort in receiving the ball on the turn means that he probably could receive the ball in those areas, but I think that if you were limiting his carrying game, you'd be taking a lot out of his game, and I also think defensively and physically he might struggle to play that sitting role. There's also the simple fact that he's operating in the Championship, and most of the other players on this list are operating in the top 5 leagues. Up next is Parma's Bernabe. Bernabe is a really nice passer of the ball. However, he normally plays alongside another player whose job it is to receive from the centre-backs. I actually really quite like Mandela Keita, who performs that role for Parma in terms of receiving on the turn. He actually maybe isn't first choice in that role. Bernabe is a fantastic passer of the ball, but again is lacking both the fact of where he receives the ball, and also his physical game isn't the most outstanding. Next up is Lamine Camara, also a really brilliant technical player. Could he technically receive the ball from the centre-backs in that number 6 deepest role? I think probably, but my concerns would be about his ability to shield the defence. He also, in his current role, loses the ball a lot because it's his job to take risks, which is fine because he creates a lot of chances with the risk that he's taking. He would have to make a considerable change to the way that he played if he was to operate in a different role for Spurs. Next up is Milan's Yacine Adli. Adli has been misused as a number 10 for considerable portions of his career simply because he's a technically gifted player. I do think that he can receive the ball from the centre-backs on the turn due to his technical and creative gifts. He also does wants to impose himself defensively, but he just has this tendency to miss on his tackles and struggle physically. And my top choice amongst those number 8 type players is Ezequiel Palacios of Leverkusen. Yeah, again, a really absolutely brilliantly technically gifted player. Can and does receive the ball from the centre-backs, but he is a small figure. The other concern is whether the injuries are tolling up for him. He didn't play that much last season, so he might actually, at the age of 26, already be on the decline, and that is obviously a bit of a scary thing to spend a lot of money on. So we're now going to move on to the list of players who I think are primarily that deepest lying midfielder type profile, but we're starting with one in Federico Redondo. Yes, son of that Redondo. He's currently into Miami. And at Miami, he's actually used more as a central midfielder, as a number 8, because Miami have Sergio Busquets, the best number 6 in the history of the game. And so as a result, he's sort of shunted out of position. But before that, in Argentina, he was playing that sitting role, and that's quite clearly where his skill set leans to. Now, obviously, the fact that he's not playing in that role right now, and also the fact that he isn't operating in the top 5 leagues, does put him at the bottom of this list for now. I have no idea how much it would cost to get a player out of Inter Miami. I don't know how MLS transfers work at all, to be honest. But I really like him. I find him exciting. And obviously some of that is in the name value. Yeah, fair enough. but he had to make the list. Up next is Lils Ayubiadi, a really exciting prospect. You can see, again, his comfort receiving the centre-backs, turning on the ball. He wants to orchestrate things. He wants to be a midfield general from that deepest role. But he's 17, and that does show in terms of his statistics and what he's achieving on the pitch right now, is that he isn't at that level to be a locked-on first 11 player. In the future, I'm confident that he will be, but in terms of Spurs wanting to bring in a player who can make an instant impact, he's probably not there yet. Next up is the last player who isn't from a non-top 5 league. That is Arden Jashari of Schalke Brugge. Yeah, again, statistically absolutely outrageous, but then he is playing for a moderately dominant team in a lesser league. It's hard to get a feel on the speed of his play compared to a top league, the physicality of his game compared to a top league. And so while he's really, really fun to watch, how well that might scale up to, again, being instantly in a first 11 position, top priority for me in the window for Spurs. Can he do that game week 1? Maybe, but also maybe not. Next up is Celta Vigo's Hugo Sotelo. Sotelo, a lovely technical passer, does receive from the centre-backs, although he will also drop out away from the opposition block to do so sometimes, so maybe in a more intense league that could be a slight question mark, but the bigger question mark for me is just his defensive and physical game. He's definitely got the technical game. Could he do the off-ball game? Maybe not. Working our way up the list now, I want to talk about Sevilla's Lucien Agume. Agume's career has been frequently interrupted. He's had some pretty rough loans where he hasn't been able to look impressive. Finally, he's got a decent run of games in a not totally terrible Sevilla, but still not great. And he's finally putting up the numbers that you might want from a player of this profile. Agume has all the tools. He's really physically gifted. Huge frame, fast, physically imposing, strong. He's a creative passer. His career has been split between those two sort of number 6 versus number 8 roles. Sometimes he's got license to roam forwards. Sometimes he's tasked more with sitting. I do still think that he is slightly underperforming the abilities that he has as a player, the gifts and tools that he has as a player. And again, here you have a player who has been asked to take a lot of risk with the ball and loses the ball a lot, and we would probably ask him to modify that a bit, and there'd be an adjustment there. But again, in terms of the skill set available, Agume is really brilliant. He just hasn't quite put that together yet in his career at the age of 23. Into the player that he definitely could be. But if you trust in your coaching, if you trust in Frank and Cochrane, the ability of the coaching at Spurs to get the best out of what he has, then Agume could be a good option. Next we had Angelo Stiller from Stuttgart, recently linked to Real Madrid, although it looks like that's not materialising. Stiller is a really lovely passer of the ball, left-footed wand he has, although he does bobble his passes sometimes, whatever. The big problem for Stiller is that he's just not that physically imposing, not that good defensively. But God, he's so good on the ball, I almost want to close my eyes and pretend that isn't the case. Next up, Douglas Luiz of Juventus, formerly of Aston Villa. Not having a good time at Juve, not been in a settled team at all. Looks like Juve are wanting to get rid of him. Could be a good deal for the player that he is. Again, definitely has the technical and creative gifts that you would want from a player like this. The concern would be his defensive profile. Not that he is bad defensively or weak defensively like some of these players I've mentioned before, but more that his style of defending is that aggressive, go and chase the ball, go and get the ball type defensive profile that we have in Bentancur and currently have in Bissouma, although presumably we're moving him on. Whereas I think you would want your number 6 to be a sitter and a shielder and less active. I think Luiz has a tendency, because maybe his physical profile isn't that dominating, isn't that great in the air. He wants to make up for that with graft and intensity and being early to the ball. And again, that's not really the profile we would want there defensively. But still, I think financially, potentially a really good deal. You've got a Premier League proven player absolutely there who is unwanted at an Italian club. I think that he could possibly be gotten pretty cheap considering the player that he is. Staying in Italy, and also kind of technically Juve's books, is Nicolo Ravella. who is actually at Lazio, and I think they have an option for him. I don't know if they've activated that option yet, but yeah, really, really lovely playmaker. Sometimes plays the deepest role, sometimes receives from the centre backs, doesn't always. Does like to roam about, so you would be stifling that roaming a little bit. And the other thing is that he's got good defensive numbers because he puts himself about, but he's not super dominant in his physical duels. But I think that would probably be okay. And we're hitting Juventus a third time in a row. Oh my goodness. This time it's their captain, Locatelli. Can Spurs get Juventus' captain off their books? Historically, no, not at all. But Juventus are in such a mess of a place. Locatelli is the player keeping Luiz out of the team, keeping Ravella out of consideration. Wow, what a special, special player. He is 27, obviously on the older end of this group of players I'm looking at. But I think, given how youthful Spurs have gone in the last few windows, we could actually afford to bring in a more experienced player at this stage. Maybe, in fact, that's what we should be doing if we're talking about a first 11 quality player straight off the bat, going to come in, make an instant impact to the first 11 from the first week of the league. And I would be confident in Locatelli's ability to do that. Special, special player on the ball and perfectly good off the ball. Plays that role that we're talking about. Wow. And my number one top option probably isn't that much of a surprise. It's the one that everyone says that they want most of all. Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton. Statistically, Adam Wharton is actually not that impressive compared to some of these other options. So why is he top of my list? Even though he's even though he's definitely going to be the most expensive one. Yes, homegrown plays a factor in that. Yes, his youth plays a factor in that. Crystal Palace is a bit of a weird setup. They are a transition-focused, high-pressing team who don't actually tend to do that much in possession. And that's why, although I've listed him with the sitting number 6s, he doesn't do much receiving from the centre-backs, because that's just not how Crystal Palace really play. But that is how he used to play for Blackburn. I don't think it's out of the question to say he fulfilled the number 6 profile in the Championship, and he proved his physical and speed and intensity ability at Crystal Palace in a different role. Therefore, we can expect him to combine those two things and perform that number 6 playmaker role in the Premier League. I think you've got a special, special player here. Even though he is a less developmental stage than some of the other playmakers I've listed on this list, I think that his ceiling is enormously high. The one thing he does better than anyone on this list is that and this is specific to Crystal Palace in a way, but it's true of him in general, is that he makes a pass with his interception and instantly turns defence into attack. I love that he does that, reading the play defensively and offensively with a single touch. We should have been in for Adam Wharton when he was at Blackburn. The second best time to be in for Adam Wharton is now.